The NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
7 things you don't really need to know, but probably should. I'm Ciara Revin, and this is the Sunday 7.
On today's episode of the award-winning Sunday 7, we catch up on cutting-edge cancer treatment, celebrate 40 years of Tetris, and get good news for Britain's loneliest bat. Plus, Will Guyatt, the Smart 7's resident tech guru, is here to talk DeepSeek and Donald Trump. If you're enjoying our episodes, please do like and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. We're here 7 days a week at 7 a.m. with the 7 biggest stories on the Smart 7. Before we get started, though, it was on this day in 1935 that the detective Leonard Keeler conducted the first ever polygraph test. He created the lie detector machine, also known as the Keeler polygraph, and it was used on 2 local criminals in Wisconsin who were subsequently convicted of assault based on his evidence. Just last week saw Donald Trump launching America's new AI initiative called Stargate. It's backed by some heavy hitters in the world of finance and AI, including SoftBank, Sam Altman of OpenAI and Larry Ellison of Oracle. It was Ellison's speech in the White House that attracted most interest from the science and tech communities as he spoke about using the power of AI to develop individualised cancer vaccines. It might sound like the stuff of science fiction, but in fact it's the cutting edge of the battle against cancer. And AI will enable the complicated process of finding, analysing, customising an mRNA vaccine. But there's already interesting work going on with vaccines and cancer treatment. Professor Sarah Blagden is the director of a new research collaboration between pharmaceutical company GfK and Oxford College, and she explained to Radio 4 what their approach to vaccine-based cancer treatment is.
We now know that cancer does not come from nowhere. You always imagine it would take about a year or 2 years to develop in your body, but in fact we now know that cancers can take up to 20 years, sometimes even more, to develop as a normal cell transitions to become cancerous. And we know that actually at that point, most cancers are invisible when they are going through this, what we now call pre-cancer stage. And so the purpose of the vaccine is not to vaccinate against established cancer, but to actually vaccinate against that pre-cancer stage. We're lucky because there have been a huge amount of sort of technical breakthroughs that mean that we can, use sort of detailed microscopy, single-cell genetic sequencing, etc., etc. So we can actually now start to be able to detect the undetectable. And from that, we've been able to work out what features those cells have as they're transitioning towards cancer. And so we can design a vaccine specifically targeted against that.
It's not just cancer that is getting the high-tech treatment either. A new tech startup called Motif Neurotech has developed a pea-sized chip for the human brain, which is aimed at helping to treat depression. Initially, they are working with patients who have had no benefit from more traditional drugs-based treatment, and co-founder and CEO Jacob Robinson says the idea of minimally invasive biotech could be a game-changer.
One of the things that we've begun to discover about depression is that these are circuit-level disorders. And in the case of depression, brain activity is predominantly trapped in this state. The device that we're building is a miniature implant, and it stimulates that part of the executive function network that increases its activity. So it becomes strengthened. So now it pulls you out of that ruminating state, the state of those negative emotions, and now you can begin to do the things that were impossible before. If you look at people on antidepressants today, a lot of them fall off because of weight gain or sexual dysfunction. These are things that we shouldn't even be exposing people to because this is a brain disorder.
This week, the world of tech has been rocked by a Chinese app called DeepSeek. Its impact was so significant that it saw a crash in tech stocks, but that was just the beginning of the story, as the AI chatbot app turned out to have quite a few secrets up its imaginary sleeves. Here to talk us through the biggest tech stories of the week is our new and improved AI tech guru, Guy Willett. Only joking. We would never replace Will with a cheap knockoff. How was your week, Will?
Don't worry, one day I'll replace myself with a rival Chinese gadget bot. And thanks for asking about my week. It was definitely better than the graphics card and AI compute company Nvidia, who saw an eye-watering $600 billion wiped off their share price in an afternoon, the largest drop any company in the world has ever experienced in a single day of trading, and they hadn't even done anything wrong. This was all because of the emergence of the Chinese tech company DeepSeek and their AI model DeepSeek R1, which rocketed to the top of app stores, knocking ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and all the others out the way.
Talk us through this DeepSeek app.
So, DeepSeek is the first Chinese AI model to really break through and seemingly do what it does almost as well as the more established Western AI products. Perhaps the most exciting thing about DeepSeek is the suggestion that it needs less advanced tech and therefore less power and resources to deliver results that are close to ChatGPT at an alleged hundredths of the cost of its Western rival. DeepSeek said it cost $6 million to develop their AI model, whereas OpenAI say they spent over $6 billion in the last 12 months developing ChatGPT.
It really rocked Silicon Valley, didn't it?
It certainly did, and we don't even know if the Chinese developers are being 100% honest and genuine about their results. But the best way we can describe this is that investors and Western tech businesses finally realise you don't need a Ferrari to make AI possible. You can do it almost as well on a cleverly tuned lawnmower. And that's what's caused the value of AI businesses, tech giants, and component manufacturers to have monstrous wobbles over the last week or so. Things aren't as bad as they were last Monday, and there's been a small bounce back, but it's been a tough week, particularly when Nvidia itself was preparing to launch its new range of RTX 50 gaming graphics cards, which sold out in less than 15 minutes when they launched later this week.
But all was not as it seemed.
It really does depend on who you believe. Various US business leaders, alarmist media, and senators shot to the defense of US-developed AI models and criticized DeepSeek for scraping data from the internet without permission or storing your data in China. Well, replace China for the US in that statement, and that's exactly what OpenAI has been doing in return. Others pointed out that DeepSeek was hiding answers about the mistreatment of Uyghur Muslims in China and censoring questions about the Tiananmen Square massacre, seemingly ignoring the fact that both are commonplace everywhere in China. As DeepSeek software is open source, they have said you could set up your own version in another country, and stuff that is of concern to the Chinese state would not be censored.
This week also saw Donald Trump making headlines, firstly as Meta settled a lawsuit with him for quite a chunk of change. What was it about, Will?
Regular listeners will know that I've already suggested that Mark Zuckerberg is now practically rocking a Trump MAGA hat after his recent reinvention as a Republican. But it was a surprise to see Meta handing the new president $25 million compensation after Trump's accounts were banned from the platforms during Joe Biden's presidency, having been ruled to have stoked up violence and misinformation and, I quote, a risk to public safety in 2021 following the Jan 6 insurrection when they tried to overthrow Joe Biden. Since Trump called Facebook an enemy of the people in March last year and said he would jail Mark Zuckerberg, we've seen a very quick change in attitude. And don't worry, Trump won't pocket all of the $25 million himself. Some $22 million of it is going to fund Trump's new presidential library. So expect some lovely portraits and big canvases of Trump's original tweets from the White House toilet.
And he's having trouble getting Google to obey his orders on geography, right?
We have definitely stepped into some kind of alternate reality, as the president of Mexico has just asked Google to stop renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. The power of Trump over US tech companies seems stronger than ever before. Now, so far, Google has only renamed it for those based in the US, and despite Trump's law to change the name, the reality is there's no international organization responsible for naming bodies of water, and a UN convention stops countries from doing exactly what the US has done. But Trump and reality are not always bedfellows. And proving that trolling is alive and well in Mexico, the president there has suggested that she will request Google renames the USA Mexican America. Well played.
Still to come in the Sunday 7, we step carefully into the world of bacteria mats, and the Doomsday Clock keeps on ticking. It's quite possible you've never heard of cyanobacteria, but they are actually one of the first life forms on Earth dating back over 2 billion years. They are microorganisms who can photosynthesize, which helped to create the Earth's oxygen-rich, life-supporting atmosphere. But although they're old, they're still revealing secrets even now, as a new study by Loughborough and Nottingham Trent University have discovered. Joining me on the line is Dr. Mazza, a lecturer in applied mathematics and the lead researcher on this interesting project, which involves how cyanobacteria combine to create what is called biomass. So, what are cyanobacteria? Why are they so important to Earth's history and ecosystems today?
Cyanobacteria are bacteria, first of all. They're found almost in every body of water, from lakes to rivers and seas and the ocean. And they hold a very special place in the history of life on Earth, as their progenitors invented photosynthesis. And because of that, cyanobacteria, their progenitors, billions of years ago, made possible the emergence of complex organisms like animals and us humans.
Tell us about your discovery around biomass. How do these tiny bacteria manage to weave themselves into such intricate structures?
So cyanobacteria manage to weave together an intricate structure, and that is the central point of our work. Try to find out how they do that. It's a physical mechanism that we discovered that determines a typical mesh size. So if you look at a fabric, close up, you'll see that there is a mesh. Just like in a fabric, there is a typical size. It's not just random. Essentially, these bacteria, they wiggle. They constantly wiggle. They move. Either swim in liquid water, or they crawl on a solid surface. But the combination of their wiggling, their typical way with which they change the curvature as they wiggle, together with their preference for bundling up, they like to stick together and form bunches of filaments. The combination between these two mechanisms creates a typical mesh size. And then eventually they form, networks of filaments, of bundles of filaments, and then they form, a larger scale, even these biomats.
Where can we find them in nature?
People can observe biomats in nature almost, in every body of water, from riverbanks, for example. If you walk along riverbanks and you see some green or brown slime, that's to a large extent cyanobacteria that can grow on the surface of a fountain or on the surface of a monument exposed to rain, for example. In some situations, they can also grow to large sizes, and in that case, one speaks of algal blooms that can be toxic, and that often happens because humans have interfered with the natural balance of an ecosystem by polluting that ecosystem.
Why could this research be a game changer for so many industries and fields?
In general, let me just say that it's difficult to predict, what advancement in fundamental science will lead to a breakthrough in practical applications and in industrial sector. However, I think we can say that when we better understand Mother Nature and the solutions she came up with in billions of years of evolution, we can also learn some new tricks from her. For example, the cyanobacteria weave biomats which are responsive to external perturbation. If you shine a light which is too strong on these biomats, the biomat will shrink away from that source of light. Now imagine that we could produce some fabric, some textiles that respond in a smart way to varying light conditions or varying temperature. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Other possible applications could be, the big problem of biofouling. If you have a big boat, sailing the seas, eventually lots of natural, organisms will accumulate on the surface of the metal underwater. This is called biofouling, and that's a problem because it increases friction for these boats, which means they have to consume more fuel to move at the same speed. Eventually they have to stop and manually remove all this gunk. So, but it all starts with small scale, micron scale, biofilms. And so if we better understand how the biofilms forms and biomats, we can also understand how to prevent their growth.
Now that Donald Trump has been back in the White House for almost 2 weeks, you may be getting that familiar sense of absolute chaos. If you watch season 1 of President Trump, it's quite possible you've gone out of your way to forget things like his COVID press conferences and the recommendation to ingest bleach. But he hasn't forgotten, and even if the second season appears to be called the far right wing, his impact on the world and on the global stage is not to be underestimated. The best way to tell how much trouble the world is in is usually to take a quick look at the cheerily named Doomsday Clock. It's a project that was started in 1947 at the start of the Cold War between the US and Russia by an organisation called the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, and it reflected the threat of a nuclear arms race. The idea is a countdown to midnight, and the closer it is, the worse things are. It was set to 90 seconds to midnight in 2022 after Russia invaded Ukraine, but this week it inched another second closer to that fateful time. Daniel Holz is chair of the Bulletin Science and Security Board, and he says we should really be heeding this clock's message.
So we've moved forward to 89 seconds to midnight, and that is the closest the Doomsday Clock has ever been to midnight in the history of the clock. So clearly our message is things are not going great. We're tremendously concerned. But the message is also there are plenty of actions that can be taken to turn back the clock. So what we hope is that, the public and in particular leaders will choose to take those actions to make the world safer, to diminish these existential risks, which include nuclear risk, climate change, AI, pandemics. We include mis and disinformation as part of that.
Still to come this Sunday 7, we flash back to the origins of Tetris and we meet a lonely bat.
Right after this.
To make switching to the new Boost Mobile risk-free, we're offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
So why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Because you have nothing to lose. Boost Mobile is offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
No, I asked why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Oh.
Wouldn't.
Because you love wasting money as a way to punish yourself because your mother never showed you enough love as a child?
Whoa. Easy there.
Yeah.
Applies to online activations. Requires port in and auto pay. Customers activating in stores may be charged non-refundable activation fees.
Welcome back.
If you've ever played Animal Crossing or Disney's Dreamlight Valley, you may be what's known as a cozy gamer. New research suggests that post-pandemic, many of us are in search of less of Call of Duty and more of Call of Cozy, small, comforting games that help to shut out the chaos of the world. Researchers are even investigating these games as potential therapeutic tools for people with ADHD. The original cozy game might well be Tetris, with the gently falling blocks entertaining over 500 million people in the 40 years since it was first released. Henk Rogers is one of the co-founders who helped to take Tetris worldwide after he stumbled across it at a Russian trade show.
I would stand in line and wait for my turn to play, every game that was at the show, or try to anyway, and I get a few minutes to play every game. And so I need to sample as many games as possible. Well, in the case of Tetris, I found myself standing in the line 4 times, which meant that I was hooked to the game. I mean, right then and there, I had to go back. So that meant we had at least one customer, me.
The UK has a long history in innovation when it comes to fertility treatment. In 1978, British scientists were behind the first so-called test tube baby, or in vitro fertilisation. That's a process where the egg and sperm are combined outside of a woman's womb, and it's become a standard practice across the world. But now there could be a significant shift in the technology of fertility, with the British Human Fertility and Embryology Authority Board approving research on what is known as IVG. That's in vitro gametes, and it will see sperm or egg created artificially from skin cells, and it opens a whole new world of parenting for older couples, same-sex couples, or solo parenting. Peter Thompson is the chief executive of the HFEA, and he says the technology is potentially a huge breakthrough, but he's concerned about how it will be used.
These are grown from one's own cells, if you like, either embryonic stem cells or skin cells. So this technology is most applicable to people who have low sperm counts or low ovarian reserve. They can't have a genetically related child. So the idea is you would take the cells from this particular individual and effectively reprogram them back into their original sort of pluripotent state, and then develop sperm or eggs as appropriate from there? Are there some things that just should be outlawed? And this sort of solo parenting is biologically dangerous, and the HFEA board are firmly of the view that should the government decide, any government in future decide to allow this IVG technology, then this sort of parenting should actually be outlawed.
There was good news this week for bat fans. The greater mouse-eared bat has been declared extinct in the UK, with only one known member of the species left alive. He's an elderly male who was discovered in Sussex living in a disused railway tunnel. But all may not be lost, as experts this week identified a female of the species of breeding age at Dover Castle, much to the delight of Daniel Whitby, who is an ecologist and the founder of the Bat Conservation and Research Unit. He explained to BBC Local Radio what the plan is for the unlikely couple.
After 22 years searching and looking in the area where we've had this male, we've now discovered a female. We've attached a small identification ring onto her wrist. We've given her a little bit of jewellery, so we can identify that individual in the future. The male had a ring on already. We can also identify if any new individuals turn up. Bats do break the rules when it comes to how long they live. The record we have is 41 years old for a species called a whiskered bat, so it is possible the male could still be around. We haven't seen him for 2 years, but the hope with this female is that there could possibly be a small breeding population hiding somewhere, just hidden away in a building, in a tree, something like that. So we've now got a bit of hope. Hopefully we could find a breeding colony and have this species sort of taken off the extinction list as a species that's breeding again in the UK.
This has been the Sunday 7. Wherever you're listening, do us a favour and hit the follow button. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. with the regular Smart 7. Have a great rest of your weekend. Written, produced and published by Daft Doris.
Hey, you know what would make your customer service help desk way better? Dumping it and then switching to Intercom. But you're not quite ready to make that change. We get it. That's why Finn, the world's leading AI customer service agent, is now available on every help desk. Finn can instantly resolve up to 80% of your tickets, which makes your customers happier and gets you off the customer service rep hiring treadmill. Finn by Intercom, the leading customer service AI agent, now available on every help desk.